Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video on the channel. Inside of today's video, we're going to try and predict all of the balance changes which are going to drop a week on Tuesday. That's when the update is going to arrive, and of course we'll have like more update information probably Sunday. So let's try and predict them. We're going to be going through buffs, reworks and nerfs as well. So just a quick disclaimer, I feel like there's not going to be a lot of balance changes, mainly because there's of course new hypercharges, which we should be getting about 10 or 12 hypercharges, and we've got this massive gadget rework, which I'll do a video on it in the future. But let's just go through a few. So we're going to be starting off with the buff, starting off with Ems. I think Ems has just dropped off the meta completely and has done for about 4 or 5 months. Even with the hypercharge, she's just been pretty bad. So if we can do one or two things, I think either increasing, decreasing the hypercharge rate, because I feel like she never really gets hypercharge. It's a terrible hypercharge anyway, so let's just give her more hypercharge. Or they could slightly buff her range or reload speed, because again, I feel like she gets punished too easily. Meeple's next on the buff list, because Meeple is just plain and simple pretty boring to play. I don't actually think he's horrible. I feel like I've won every single rank game with him so far, but for the casual play base, he's just so uninteresting. So let's buff the reload speed a little bit. If other things are toxic, we can look at maybe decreasing the supercharge rate or damage, but I think a reload buff will really do him well. So we have Ruffs. So Ruffs really isn't the greatest in the meta right now. I thought his hypercharge would be really good, especially in pro play as well, but the problem with this is that the kind of timings are just really awkward. By the time you've got a hypercharge, you know, your teammates have probably already built one up, and then also if you already have a Ruffs tree, if you already have a power up, you can't then pick up that hypercharge super, so it's just really awkward. So shout out to Ark, who kind of highlighted this to me, and I was like, yeah, that just makes sense. So it should make it so you can still at least get the hypercharge charge even if you've already got a power up, because again, a lot of the time it just ends up being left there and just being of no use to anyone. So next up, I'd like to see a buff with Buzz. So Buzz is one of the least touched brawlers in terms of balance changes. I think he deserves a HP buff by now. I've just not seen him whatsoever competitive, even as like a counter pick. I think a HP buff with all the damage buffs and whatever has gone on, Buzz has just been left behind. So next up we have Charlie. So Charlie again has been completely left behind by this meta. It's probably thanks to her star powers and gadgets not being that great, and the hypercharge is one of the worst in the game. So I think just buffing her supercharge rate just by one shot should be enough to at least make her a viable pick. So next I want to see a buff with Mo, and I know what you're thinking. Mo has literally only not been meta with this update, but it's been a couple of months since those balance changes, and he's easily been a D-tier brawler in the meta. So I'm thinking they should revert one of the nerfs. They nerfed his reload speed, his super damage, and his super recharge rate. I think they should revert his reload speed, maybe. I don't know, you guys let me know. Maybe buff his damage a little bit. One of these should be reverted, and then tread carefully and buff a little bit at a time. So now moving on to the reworks. So a lot of these reworks we've already said about 100 times, but let's just go through them and hope one of them at least is going to make it with the update, seeing as it's been over 2 months since the last update. So the first one is Bonnie. So Bonnie needs a slight rework, so either to her gadget and her star power. You know the ones, I don't even need to say about them. They need reworks desperately. And then also, since Mo came out, of course, you just realize how bad Bonnie is. It takes her forever to get back into cannon form, whilst Mo can just get in and out really easily. So they need to also buff the at least lessen the time it takes from jumping in and then going back to your cannon form, because I believe it takes nearly like 30 seconds, which is just stupid. So we have Lola. So I know Lola is getting a hypercharge, and that might make her more fun, but I still think fundamentally she's one of the least played brawlers in the game, because she's got no fun factor to her. So I think maybe to try and, you know, promote you throwing your clone away from you, which of course no one does because you just double stack the damage, maybe give yourself like a speed boost or just something. They need to try and add something that makes Lola a bit more fun, and I just can't think of it. We have Doug. So of course Doug is in desperate need of a rework. Will this finally be the update he gets one? Again, you gotta be careful with Doug, because he can be very toxic on a select few maps, but he's desperately needing a rework. I don't know what they can do. Add a heal trait, add a tank trait, add something to him, longer range, but then revert back to the healing that he used to, in terms of like doing more healing up close rather than further away. They just need to do something with him. It's terrible. The next brawler that needs a rework is Ollie. So I think straight away with Ollie, they need to remove his self-mute. I spoke about it on a previous video. Just remove it. I don't know whether they want to then add something to combat this, because of course they added the self-mute because they probably thought the mechanic of the hypnotize and the Brawler was too strong. So I don't know what they can add, but at least remove a self-mute. I just think it's so stupid. So next up we got Bull. So I feel like I can't mention Bull because whenever I don't, people just really hate on me on the comments, even though I've said this for about 2 years now. Just give him the Stomper gadget as a super full time. It might be a little bit broken to begin with, but he just needs something, or just anything to do with his super, because the super is so predictable, it's so slow. They need to change it. Then lastly, for the reworks, I went with Pam. So Pam, as you can tell by the meta, has completely fallen off, and maybe even into the F tier now, because her damage is just way too inconsistent, and that's mainly because of her unload speed. So I think they need to drastically change her attack in terms of the unload speed, because it takes forever to get that full attack out, and people can just juke in and out of it really easily. Or they could, of course, just like thin her attack so you get more damage. I know something needs to change with her attack, because straight up damage is not good enough. I think definitely Pam as a Brawler is really outdated. So now we're going to be moving on to the nerfs, and I'm just going to kind of ruin a few of them. A lot of these are going to be hypercharge nerfs, because I think the last batch of hypercharges, they really were quite kind on them. They tend to be most of the time. Like, some of them take 2 supers to get a hypercharge with it, which is crazy. So the first one is Rico. Of course, Rico needs a gadget nerf, but I'm hoping with the gadget rework, maybe multiple launcher will have a big cooldown, but he needs a hypercharge rate nerf anyways, because people can cycle like 3-4 hypercharges in one game, which is ridiculous. It's way too strong, so let's nerf it a good amount. So next we have Stu. Stu is easily a top 3 Brawler in the game right now, and that's thanks to his hypercharge. The fact that you can fully heal up so quickly with this super is just way too strong. So either they need to nerf the hypercharge rate so he has less pop-off moments, or they need to revert probably the HP buff that he received some time ago, which I don't even understand why he got that HP buff anyways, because he was still like a B tier Brawler. So yeah, definitely needs one of those 2 nerfs. So next up we have Penny. So Penny could do with 1 or 2 nerfs again. So either they could nerf her hypercharge rate, because when she gets that hypercharge turret, it's like impossible to push into because of those 2 cannonballs. The zoning is incredible, especially with the fire on the ground. Or they need to, of course, just nerf her supercharge rate, maybe something like that, because she's just way too good into everything right now. Next up we have Frank. So Frank still continues to be one of the best Brawlers in the game, and that's because he just simply has way too much HP. He's one of those Brawlers in draft where you can pretty much just late pick him into a couple of low DPS Brawlers and you just win, because he has so much HP. So they can either, of course, nerf his HP, because let's face it, it definitely is overtuned, or they need to nerf his hypercharge rate. One of these 2 nerfs will be nice. So with a nerf list, hopefully it's a Lou. So I know Lou has only just became meta with the recent balance changes, but he's definitely a little bit too toxic right now. So they could do maybe one of 2 things. They could either just slightly decrease his reload speed, but I kind of like this reload speed buff. I would rather kind of revert something else. So either nerfing his hypercharge rate, or they could nerf his gadget. So if you guys didn't know, with his gadget, which instantly freezes people 50%, it just means that you can just use 1 piece of ammo to freeze them instantly. Why not nerf his gadget a little bit to like 40%, 30%, whatever it is, so he needs 2 pieces of ammo to freeze someone instantly, because there's just no counterplay to that gadget and 1 piece of ammo. Next up on the nerf list we have Juju. I would say this is the only absolute guaranteed nerf on this list, because she's a cut above the rest of the meta right now. She's so good everywhere, and we should be nerfing her Elementalist gadget 100%. So I think being invisible for that long, they should just probably cut it by like a second. A throw that can go invisible is already such a strong mechanic, and then also the shield that she gets with that gadget, I believe it's like a 50% damage reduction shield or even higher, which is bigger than Crow's defensive booster gadget. So yeah, they need to be nerfing this. And then I think they should nerf her pet in one way or another. So either nerfing supercharge rate, so it takes an extra hit, either nerfing the pet's HP, just something to tone Gree down a bit. The next one on the nerfs list, I'm going to go with Melody. So I know Melody might be nerfed a little bit with the gadget changes, maybe because her shield gadget is just so strong. But if not, I think they need to nerf her hypercharge rate just a little bit, just because I find her making too many pop-off plays, especially in a competitive meta. and it just runs through everything because her star power and gadget are so strong with the hypercharge. Next up on my nerf list, I'm going to go with Amber. So this is only if she receives a hypercharge in the next update. I think they need to be proactive just like they were with Melody, and they need to nerf something because if she gets the hypercharge, she'll easily be the best brawler in the game. So again, only if she gets the hypercharge, probably nerf her health or damage just a little bit. Next up on the nerf list, I've gone with Berry. So this is only going to be a small nerf because I think with all the meta shifts that Berry won't be as good, but I still find that he cycles through to his hypercharge just a little too much, and I don't like how there's so many purple button angry brawlers right now. So let's nerf the hypercharge rate a little bit. Moving on to the final nerf on my wish list, I've gone with Janet. So again, I know another brawler that's only just became meta, but it's with good reason because her hypercharge is just too good right now. To get 2 supers to use this hypercharge, which if you know how to use it effectively, it's a free kill every single time. They need to nerf this hypercharge rate. I don't think really any brawler should, except for like Crow maybe, to only need 2 supers to get a hypercharge. It's way too strong. Make it free, and then yeah, the less purple button and more skillful interactions. So that's gonna be it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know whether I missed out on any in the comment section below, but again, I don't want all of these changes to happen, mainly because I think the gadget change is going to completely shift the meta, but I'm going to speak about that more on my second channel if you guys are interested. Anyways, it's going to be it. Hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.